But I love your Kickstart program, right? The fact that you can have somebody sort of fix all the problems out of the gate
Yeah.
pretty quickly, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, once that's done and you've sort of got your new foundation built,
Yeah.
a lot of folks don't know what to do from an editorial calendar perspective, or how
Yeah.
frequently to create new content, or when to rotate out ads, right? One thing
Yeah.
we didn't have to deal with in search was creative burnout, right? I mean, the same
That's
ad
true.
was
Yeah.
there forever, and it continued to perform because that person
Yeah.
only really needed a new lawn sprinkler once every 5 years. So they
That's right.
wouldn't see the same ad more than once. But in social, if you're starting to boost posts, and you've sort of found that perfect
Yeah.
post boosting audience, you might need to rotate stuff out. But then people are like, well,
Yeah.
how frequently should I rotate it out? And should I be
Mm.
very different, or should I be sort of the same? It's
Yeah.
like King of the Hill. So how do you walk people through that planning process?
That is a common question. I have an answer that I think it won't blow your mind, but I think it'll blow most people's minds. So, what is the difference between a publisher, like a New York Times, where every day there's news? So even if there's not news, you have to make up some news, right? A publisher, like you turn on the TV, there's always some kind of thing. You got to publish every day. There's a calendar. Versus a rock band like Guns N' Roses, right? I saw Guns N' Roses. I saw Axl Rose sing "Sweet Child of Mine" on stage, even though that was Appetite for Destruction, 1987. That was 30 some years ago. He made these songs a long time ago, but he's not publishing new songs every day. He's making royalties off of the stuff that we call the greatest hits. So what's the difference between a rock band who has greatest hits versus a publisher who has to always have news? You turn on TV, there has to be something on. What's the difference between those two?
Just what their payback looks like. I mean, publisher needs to keep something fresh all the time, because yesterday's news is yesterday's news. For Axl Rose, yesterday's news is still important to the audience, right? So
Yeah.
a publisher needs to keep their audience engaged with fresh content. Axl Rose is lucky enough that people want to keep hearing the same thing over and over again.
Yeah. And so look at the content that we have. And I'd like to say in most businesses, unless you're in the news business or you're doing like flash sales or something where the content's always, stuff's always changing, 80% of your content should be evergreen. And even if you're doing things like here's your Christmas sale or fall sale or whatever, you still have stories. When you tell stories of people, those are evergreen. So I love being able to focus on the greatest hits, and then you don't have an issue of burnout. A lot of you guys have children, and they may like Finding Nemo, and they play. How many times do they play Finding Nemo or play that? They just, there's no burnout on that, right?
Yeah.
But if it's sales driven kind of content, if it's buy my stuff, then people will tune out. But the frequency that you can run on good content, and people say good content with, they have their way of vaguely defining it, but we define it as stories that are about people, that are why, how, and what, building the funnel. So you could put stuff out there on Facebook. You initially get that kickstart, like we talked about, telling some different stories, different angles. But as you start to interview your patients or clients or employees or team members or partners, as you start to do things like podcasts, you share expertise, that just naturally creates more content.